how Burger King helped give us Robert Downey Jr. Have you never heard this story?
Well,
No, so he
share more?
Yeah, no. He said he was at his lowest point in his life, and he went to Burger King, got a Whopper. It was the most disgusting thing he's ever had, and decided to change his life. Then, like it was
After like all the alcoholism and getting arrested
it
and
was
stuff.
it was a Whopper.
Hermione should have ended up with Harry, not Ron.
I agree.
And like
100%. Okay, because let me just tell you, like, I know I'm the total, like, person outside this, but like, I never read the books, and I went and watched the films, and I'm watching this film. I'm like, why the heck is Hermione even with Ron? Like, they don't even like each other. Like, I get it. There's a brother sister thing between Ron and Harry and Hermione, but other than that, it's like, this is dumb. They should be
because
together.
Ron is the bravest one there.
It's fine.
Why he is?
The relationship
he always,
sucks.
even though he's terrified, he always helps Harry
Yes.
at the end.
That's right. That is the courage.
But it's about relationship.
Courage.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's what I like.
The thing about Harry Potter is like, it's this kind of simple fantasy situation that got really big.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think she has a helping people thing, and therefore she should have been with Neville.
Yeah. There we go.
Oh.
Neville Longbottom. Neville Longbottom was a Chad. I'm just gonna say
Yeah,
that right
he just kind of he grew up very well. Like it's just like, all right,
Like,
I guess British people can be beautiful.
What am I
Good for
gonna
that guy. Yeah.
He's like, what am I gonna do with all this money? Hey, dentistry.
I don't blame
Is that
him.
what he went into?
He did do. Well, no, he
got his teeth fixed.
Oh, got you. I was like, I'm gonna be DDS.
Yeah.
Neville Longbottom.
Which is funny. That's what Hermione's parents did.
Yeah.
Like in lore or in
lore.
like, okay, not like
Yeah.
actual
They were
like
dentists.
what's her name? The actual actress.
Emma Watson.
Oh yeah, it's like that what her parents did.
Yeah, no.
I'm just
No, they were actually witches and wizards.
I can't distinguish between reality and fantasy when it comes to Harry Potter. So I just like
I know.
all-
This is one of the things between us because we have a pretty large age gap. And so
Yeah.
I feel like generationally, he was not set up to like Harry Potter.
sure.
But I grew up like around the time when it was, the pivotal age for it.
Oh yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I like Harry Potter, and I'm older than both of y'all.
Yeah.
yeah.
But do you really like it for the right reasons?
What are the right reasons?
She got better as it went on. I mean, the Harry Potter and Order of Phoenix is a good book, but I think
There's a lot of it.
I think Harry Potter was one of those things where she wasn't expecting it to get as big as it did.
No.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I think, and I think that's kind of what ruined her.
Yeah.
Do you need a beverage? You might need one. While
Yeah, I'm gonna grab some soda or something.
Yeah.
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 This is
I
all
was
part
just
of
Try
it.
not to hit all the stuff here.
I know.
I was just
Very
thinking
good.
we better take care of that soon.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
We're not taking this out. Just gonna.
Yeah, take any soda you want.
Yeah.
2 very boring minutes later.
Coffee koozies. Sorry you do not get a Bards and Balladeers one. Thanks for finagling your way. Don't worry.
Eat it anyways.
I've knocked over these microphones so many times.
All right, just trying to be careful. So I don't hurt your
Welcome to Bards and Balladeers.
Oscar, we are out of rock
I
bags.
think this was like under the chair leg.
Yeah.
Point.
I know.
Well, it might have been.
We need to invest in more rock bags.
There we go.
Yeah. We got plenty of rocks.
No.
Eventually.
I know all about bass.
Perfect.
All about
that
that bass. About that bass. What's
You-
your birth year?
May 1995.
Okay, I'm 94. Okay, yeah.
You and I are almost the same age. There
Yeah.
we go.
Young people.
Finally, another younger millennial. Gosh.
Yeah, I
Just kidding. I think, no,
You
Amanda's
know-
closer to your age. Chris and Dennis were closer between you two.
Chris is between the two of us.
Yeah. Closer. Brooke.
Yeah.
You never ask a lady how old she is, but
Chris said something in the podcast about like so and so when he was 10 years old, like he was 10 years old in whatever year, and I did the math, and I think he's 45, 45,
okay.
46.
Oh yeah, I knew he was older than I was.
Yeah, but I didn't think.
Sorry
he
to
was
out
older
you,
than
Chris.
Yeah, we love you, Chris.
Yeah, another artist.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Very cool guy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Am I the oldest person who's been on our podcast?
I'm sorry.
Am I the oldest person who's been on our podcast?
I don't know how old Dennis is.
No, I don't think he's that old.
Dennis is about 40.
Oh, he's younger than you.
So
Yeah, we
I'm
have
right
guys.
now. I feel like
Unless Brooke-
Donovan from Raiders, not from Last Crusade, who just chose the wrong grail.
Oh.
I feel like that right now.
You've chosen poorly. Unless Brooke was, but I don't think she was.
You know what they
she's-
say, beware
Oh.
old man and a young man's game.
Mm.
Yeah. It's true.
But yes, welcome to Bards and Balladeers podcast.
Borks and
Borkadeers. Welcome to Bards and Balladeers podcast, the podcast about story and narrative in all of its forms. This week we have another interview episode with our guest. But just to quick introduce us, I'm Kate.
I'm Rio.
I'm Oscar.
I'm Jax.
Fantastic.
A wonderful guest for this.
Welcome.
Yes, I'm happy to be here, guys. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time.
Good.
Yeah.
Please stop emailing us. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just-
Well, I mean, I was blowing up Oscar's Facebook the other day. So
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
That's
He
why I
is
don't
our PR guy.
That's why I don't go on there anymore.
oh man.
Yeah.
And yes, it's just a quick reminder, don't forget to join us and subscribe on all of our platforms that you can find us on. There's YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. Oh,
Oscar's favorite is iHeartRadio.
Oh yeah.
It's the only thing that he had to remember.
I mean, it tells me I have to heart it, so I do.
Yeah.
I just follow
iHeart.
orders.
It's a reminder. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And most importantly, don't forget about our Discord. Join us there for
Fun shenanigans.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yep. That's right.
That's what we do.
And of course, we'll have all the links in the description below. So click on that. Check us out there. And
On our Discord, we don't also have to censor ourselves, which is also nice. So we
That
can
is
quack all we
true.
want.
Oh, yeah, speaking of, I don't know.
No quacks.
No, that
No
You know what?
F-bombs,
Quack all you
no.
want.
really it's the S word, maybe
say
the
quack.
S word.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm a teacher, so I know how.
Oh,
Right,
nice.
right, yeah.
Yeah, I've had a couple kids I've worked with. I was like, okay, I want to cuss you out right now, but if I do that,
Yeah. Strangle them in your mind, not in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Yes.
Son of a biscuit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Son of a
Right.
building
So you
block.
figure, I'm sure, some pretty clever ways of avoiding.
I call kids gremlins a lot.
Oh,
There you go.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
especially.
don't feed them after midnight or
Yep.
Right.
yeah.
I think you're just not supposed to feed them.
At all. Yeah. That's probably a better option. Then
And then
nature
like
will
a stray
solve the
cat.
problem for
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
There you go.
Some problems, if you leave them alone, they
They'll
do go
solve
away.
themselves. Yeah. Mhm. Absolutely.
They'll find their way. They will.
We have Bards and Balladeer merch too. So if you ever like our little coffee mugs or you want a koozie
Our
for
logo
yourself, you
that
can have
Rio
it.
created.
So yeah.
The lipstick that's on that one is Bards and Balladeers lipstick.
Yeah. Kate
There
will,
we
if you buy one, Kate will kiss it for you.
I will. Make sure you request it though.
Yeah. I put in the special notes. I don't even know if there's a place for that, but
I only have red and pink lipstick, so
you have orange?
no.
Don't you have orange? I don't know.
No.
We'll get some black. No, it's actually
I
not
could
going to
do
be you.
that
It's going to be me kissing them all.
I guess you can request Rio's
yeah,
too.
I'll do it.
We're not going to tell you whose it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to determine by the ridges.
You can DNA
Is
test it if you want.
Yeah.
but-
Is it as is it like a fingerprint? Do
All lips have, sure. I mean, I guess.
you know this?
Well, I know the bite mark. They use bite marks, but they don't use that anymore because that's how they got what's his name, Bundy, I believe. was from
Whoa.
Bite, bite, bite.
Yeah.
What was he
bite marks.
biting? Well, I guess
he,
Well-
he bit people all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
See, that's Dahmer say he solved that one.
Yeah.
You have to finish what you start. You know.
Yeah. We don't have any quitters in this room. You know?
No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
That's for sure.
That's right. That's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
So you clean your plate. Damn it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
You don't leave the table until
Yeah.
you finish your food.
Yeah. You can't
Yeah.
have any pudding.
But yes, thank you again for, joining us.
Absolutely.
We enjoy doing these interview episodes. One, because we just like showcasing different ways of having story and narrative in
Mediums.
mediums. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you. I was like, did I say that wrong?
Yeah.
And you as an artist, I know we as we were talking earlier, you said that stories inspire art quite a bit.
Mhm.
But do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself
Yeah,
and where you started?
So my name is Jax. Like my art handle is Jax Rose Art, and I do a combination of arts education, illustration, and I'm working on writing some stuff myself as well.
Nice.
But I'd say probably my main focus has been sci-fi fantasy art. I grew up reading Dark Horse, Star Wars comics, absolutely loved them. But I would say probably my main kick into the art world was Bill Watterson and Calvin Hobbes. And I think, all of those areas, they're not just art. It's all art with language and with narrative and with, other, you can't so narrative and art is interesting because instead what you're doing is you're using visual iconography to make them understand what you're talking about. And one thing that's interesting and very, very focused on in art school is the visual iconography of culture, be it the culture you're from, or, the popular culture within the nation you live with, that kind of thing, and using those points to tell a larger story. So that's something I focus on a lot with my kids when I'm working with them, is the idea of narrative and how to use composition and texture or artistic principles to create that narrative. Because, I think a lot of artists just draw stuff, and particularly young artists too. And I think really the difference between a professional artist and a normal and like just a fun artist is really the composition and narrative that comes with it. But I'm not saying that you have to have narrative be art to have art. That's not always true. I think modern contemporary artists like Don Jose and those people, they use other visual iconography to tell a larger story. So right now I think I'm focusing more on really the finding beauty in the mundane. I'm working on a series of fishing drawings currently, and kind of branching out into more the diaspora of where I live. Very, in the countryside of Minnesota, there's a lot of, farming, fishing, hunting, kind of that like small town, feel of Americana that people really enjoy. So that's been really interesting. As someone who's coming from like sci-fi and fantasy with the big broad strokes of narrative and character and I this is an overused word, but epicness,
Sure,
as people use. But that the reason why I did that is it became a very interesting challenge. Because I think telling a story with smaller icons is very powerful if it's done right. So I recently did a picture of me fishing at my favorite fishing spot. And the value and the care and the peace I found in that place was a really main focus of the work. And also was kind of a new process for me. One thing I tell young artists all the time is that if they're having an art block or really finding some despondency within their own art, I tell them try a new medium. I use, for example, Vine charcoal and newsprint a lot in my classes to help with that. Most kids draw with pencils or do digital art on their phones, and using Vine charcoal, which is a very ancient way of drawing. All the old masters use that process, and it's close enough to pencils that it's not intimidating for the kids, but it's also different enough where it forces them to think more in shapes and value and all those things. And it really kind of breaks that block that a lot of kids have by the expressiveness you can find within that medium. That's how I was trained to teach. That's how I was trained originally. When I went to art school, one of my first classes was life drawing, and they were like, nope, Vine charcoal only, and really it's very fast, it's very flowing, and it allows one to kind of break down the barriers within like fear around not being perfect, and that's really where like, I think a lot of art in its really purest form is that distortion, like you try to recreate what's real, but at the same time, what makes your art yours is how you perceive and how you distort that around you. Right. So
almost like your own fingerprint in a way.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I know you said that you focus a lot on narrative in art. And I know that when I get asked about writer's block, my main piece of advice to people this is what I find works, and I find it helps a lot of people, is getting them to outline a little bit more. So sort of figure out the context, figure out the narrative that surrounds the scene you're working on. So maybe if you're getting a block, you just don't understand enough about the narrative supporting it, or the narrative you're going for, that you're driving toward. So either where you're coming from or where you're going to, maybe it needs to be fleshed out in more detail. Do you ever find that is something that helps some kids deal with their artist's block? Like, well, figure out why you're drawing this piece, or what you're hoping to achieve, or what the background means. What's the significance? The visual aspect seems like you're saying it's solved a lot by going to the charcoal drawing and going for kind of a more back to fundamentals approach for shape. But do you ever find that the narrative piece is what's missing for some of them?
Yes. So one thing I deeply believe as an artist is that creativity benefits from structure.
Sure.
So having this is like, for a perfect example, I had a student who was really into she immigrated from the Philippines to come here, I was interested in, creating a story about that. And I told her, research your own culture and find the archetypes and the narrative that's unique to you and your experience. And that led her to create one of the coolest drawings I've ever seen her made. She made this character that was a shattered mirror that was a direct influence from I don't remember what the deity was, but from a deity from her culture. And she created this whole story around coming here and using that creation as a reflection of her own anxieties, But, she was really stuck on that until I said, well, do some research, and that really was where, structure really benefits creativity. Like when I'm doing my own art, I have a step process that I follow that helps me kind of build the drawing over time. For a perfect example, when I do my comics, I always actually start with a written script.
For sure, yeah.
And that's not usual for some artists because most artists think visually, but I find that the written is dissociated enough from the art that you can think abstractly about what you're talking about. So for example, in one of the comics I'm working right now, there's a scene where a demon erupts from the sister of one of the main characters as a manifestation of his mental health issues and depression and suicidal issues, that kind of thing. And I did that because I wanted it to reflect how having intrusive thoughts and mania can really alter one's reality. But that really came from me just typing and being like, something happens, and like a demon comes forth, and that turned into me feeling like, well, what if the demon rips the person in half as it emerges from this character's imagination, So that's why, like, I think, the point of having that structure so then you can abstract from it creates more interesting narrative and art because you're not thinking literally. Like one thing I tell myself a lot when I'm drawing is think of dreams. When we're in reality, things are very sharp in the moment, but when we think back to them and remember them, there is that, again, distortion that comes forth, and I think part of becoming a artist happy with their work is being okay that what you see in your head doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to be on the page. Because what you see in your head is different than what it can be literal on like in front of you and seeing it. I mean, I think a good example of this was, Van Gogh. He dealt a lot with, a lot of struggles in his own life, and you saw that in his art. But the thing is too, is that the beauty came from the fact that what you were seeing looked like a dream. Like for Starry Night, very famous work, people feel it almost moves, and it kind of reminds me of how when I dream, I see clouds and that kind of thing. And, but yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, with art, people get very focused on being realistic, and honestly, the best artists are people who don't work from that.
Sure.
I think, a great example is, H.R. Geiger. He drew nightmares. Right. That's what he created, and that nightmarish biomechanicalism created a whole genre of art. Yeah, because he was a huge morphine addict, and there was a reporter one time came over to him. He offered some to him. I was like, well, why do you take that? He says, well, do you see what I draw? Sure. And that's really comes down to art is about taking the feelings, thoughts, emotions, and perspective that you have and bring it forward in a physical document. Essentially.
Sure.
Yeah, I know. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I feel like that what you said just there is sort of like you can almost take any medium away from it. It's still applicable, whether it's visual art, physical art, novels, short stories, anything music, like that. Yeah. Music. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a whole, I forget who said that. I encountered this out in the world somewhere with someone talking about how you can kind of tell what drugs people were on by the music style. So like,
sure,
like punk, a lot of the time, it seems like people were just drunk and those like, kind of aggressive and fast paced and whatever. And then you've got the LSD 70s Pink Floyd kind of thing. And, or
Molly for EDM.
Yeah. And weed has its own kind of influence.
Yeah. There's a whole genre of metal called stoner doom music that has very unique feel to it. But it came from the chill of the cannabis to create kind of that dark and brutal at the same time. A great example of probably one of the fundamental works of that is either Electric Wizard's Come My Fanatics album and Sleep's album Dope Smoker. Yeah, I know. Yeah. But I mean, like the art, the music's great. I will say, Electric Wizard does have some issues around it. If you know who they are, you will know what those issues are, but I still say their work is valid because of that.
Sure.
But that's also kind of true with all artists though. I mean, like there's a lot of great artists out there. I mean, Jackson Pollock, great example. He was beautiful art, raging asshole,
Sure.
I saw that film, beautiful art, raging asshole.
Yeah.
I saw a different version of that.
Wasn't that a still there was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon?
Yeah. I mean, but the thing is,
the trequel, the third one.
I think the biggest thing though is I think it is, while it is, you can't completely separate the art from the creator.
Sure.
But I think as an artist, one thing that I have gotten more comfortable with is releasing the need to control your own narrative around your art. And that's where that happens is, you have even the guy who created Evangelion, for example, hates his audience. Like
does he?
Yeah, he did not.
Hidekiano, like he was going through a lot when he read when he did the TV series and everything. Yeah. Like he was depressed, and you can see it in that anime and everything.
For sure.
But that's why I don't know if you watched the rebuilds at all. Have you watched the movies?
No.
Do yourself a favor, watch the rebuilds because it is him coming out of all of that.
Oh, good.
And it's fantastic because it's his resolution, his hoping for a better future kind of thing. So and plus animation's fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
it is.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It is wonderful to see sort of like an artist or a creator in a way evolve from, creating art from their suffering to going from, to finding their way and then creating art because they survived kind of thing. And seeing that turn, you don't often, like, I feel like that's a great example of seeing that in real time. Or I guess depending on, because I watched the rebuild. I haven't watched. Yeah. And I think what a cool thing to see an artist evolve. Like I think we see it mostly with like pop artists, David Bowie, like he went through so many different genres and iterations of himself. And whether or not that was like for marketing purposes or, their own, discovery with themselves. I just think it's such a cool thing to see. Yeah.
Some people legit reinvent themselves. I know Sting's wife has said that, he's reinvented himself a couple of times and she's like, and it's incredibly sexy. Just not how he's done it, but just that he can and that he has. And
what's like how Burger King helped give us Robert Downey Jr. Have you never heard this story? No. So he
share more?
Yeah, no. He said he was at his lowest point in his life, and he went to Burger King, got a Whopper. It was the most disgusting thing he's ever had, and decided to change his life. Then, like it was
after like all the alcoholism and getting arrested and stuff.
It was a Whopper,
and undiagnosed bipolar. But I think what we're talking about really is a manifestation of the Nietzschean quality, where to survive, to live is to suffer, but to survive is to find some meaning in it. And I think I work with a lot of kids where art is what is getting them through their childhood. Like they have so much weight and frustration with family, school, or, their own identity, and I think what's beautiful about art is that it is that fighting that reason, that survival, that beauty in the moment and in your own life that keeps you going. For example, I have very severe mental health issues. I have bipolar, PTSD, all that kind of stuff. And art is what allows me to process that. For me, like a point where I really found a new path to a new thing is when I was having, these hallucinations of this figure that I called the Dark Passenger when I was having my manic phases and the manic depressive phases. And one day I decided to draw him to fullest. And then suddenly I wasn't scared of him anymore.
It empowered you.
Yes. Right? Yes. And I think it really comes down to the idea that sometimes the unknown is very scary, but when you create it physically and legitimately in reality, it kind of reduces the fear around that.
I think that's what's behind that. It's sort of an old trope of like the witchcraft of naming a thing gives you control of it.
Sure. Exactly.
So invoking names is like, I think that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But I think there is a real pitfall for a lot of people. And you even see this, there's a Sherlock Holmes story. I think it might be the Dying Detective or whatever, but where some people, they either through depression or substances or whatever, they happen upon this state of mind where with what they create is wonderful. And then they try to reproduce that deliberately and artificially, either through taking substances or like trying to get themselves in destructive situations. And what gets produced a lot of the time, it's like chasing a high. It's never as good.
Right.
Because you're not happening upon it organically or naturally. And, you're not, it's like you're just putting yourself at the mercy of this thing and hoping the result is the same caliber. So,
well, one of the fundamental beliefs I have actually is the idea that there's freedom in the unknown.
Sure. Yes.
And I think that, even though we as creatives take the unknown of our minds and bring it to reality, I think having that eschewing the need to know what you're creating or know what you're dealing with, I think gives a lot of freedom, because you're not doing the comparison to like, well, why am I doing as well as this person next to me? You don't know what's going on with that person. You don't know what's going on with you, but you don't know what your next day is going to be. And embracing that actually brings great creativity, in my opinion. And, I think like, fear is the mind killer, as they say in Dune. And I think, and like, that's a lot of things I work with kids, is getting over their fear of not being good enough.
Yeah.
And I think, really it's just kind of embracing the unknown and being okay that, sometimes, because, the thing with art is, mistakes are actually an asset.
Yeah.
I have had many drawings that have gotten better because I accidentally spilled coffee on it. And
all my drawings get better that exact way.
Yes.
Actually, all my drawings are coffee stains.
But I mean,
I'm taking up coffee art now.
I did a lesson with my kids once where I told them they had to give me all their pencils and erasers, and I gave them big pens to draw with.
Sure. Be confident in those lines, man. Yeah.
But like the thing is they were terrified. It's like, well, if I make a mistake, it's like, they'll work around it.
Yeah. Work with
use
it.
your creativity, use your mind to find that better space. I actually use Bic pen for a lot of my main drawings because I like that permanence and the fact that I have to problem solve. Actually, there's a piece I sent you with two soldiers. There's a poster that says they watch. And the character with the rifle in front, I actually drew his head too high in dark pen. So I was freaking out when that happened. I was like, you know what? Maybe so I redrew the head where it needed to be, and I used a combination of the Copic markers I was using and the airbrush I had to cover up that problem. But that, because of that need for a background, that made the piece much more powerful.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think really just being okay with making mistakes and being confident and trusting yourself to find a resolution to that is not just a good lesson for art and creativity, but just for life.
I definitely use that in my writing, where I think, okay, I've put this down permanently on the page in my first book. And now everything I create after that for this series has to be some degree of faithful to that, or be just, I hope they don't catch the mistake, And I think, that you have those limits, once you have those constraints, you've got it inked on the page, as it were. Then you really have to, we talked earlier about, limits can force you the growth inward. And so you're forcing yourself to use all your ingenuity to solve a problem.
Right.
And think, okay, well, here's what I envisioned, but what are other possibilities? And it just gets you to think by creating a box and forcing all of the growth to happen inside the box. You do have to think outside the box.
Right.
Because that's where the inward pressure is.
Or think about it's like, it's working in a universe where you only have certain set of rules and everything. And a lot of people, and again, I'm not trying to critique anybody who does any kind of like artistic work, because, they're freeing themselves and they're doing what they have to create universes. But like, I feel it's a disservice when you have to create something to explain something without using like what you've been given to explain what you're trying to get to. And that's one thing that I always try to, like, I have a magic system in my book that, if you ever read my books, that it's all elemental based and everything. And I give them a certain limitation to it. But I don't want to, like, when I'm writing some subsequential books, I'm trying not to add too much, because like, why didn't they use that later? Or why didn't they use that before or whatever, it's like, you got to just kind of work with the given and be happy and find unique ways of people to use it then, or to how they would interpret it or whatever. Even like artwork too, using new mediums. Like I love when I see the shadow art where they're just like, I'm going to take all this garbage, putting it in a certain way, and then the shadow is going to create the image or something like that. But when you look at it, it's just like garbage, but it's like creating beauty out of trash. It's kind of cool. Yeah.
I think actually that's when we're talking about this. I think one of the greatest lessons of Tolkien is that he was quoted saying that his process of creating Lord of the Rings was a process of discovery.
Oh, sure.
And I think, that, I work with a lot of kids who, really want to do world building or really want to do comics or video games, whatever. And they sit down and they spend so much time writing out like the world and all that. I was like, guys, the world building is great. It's very helpful, but it's more important to do it.
Yeah.
And like, I think, like for myself, when I'm working on one of my worlds, I was really trying very hard to make everything make sense. And I just decided, what, I'm just going to go, and honestly, I've found better elements within that because I'm trying to make it up as I go. And I think a great example of this is actually the Rick and Morty series on the first 3 seasons. Sure. They just did it.
Yeah.
And then they made it work later.
Yeah.
Like the perfect example, the miniverse batteries,
Yeah.
they had the first time they introduced it, but then you see those batteries repeated throughout the world.
Yeah.
They continue
And
to
then
use it.
you know what it is, but they didn't sit down and be like, well, Rick has all these different things. And like, they're not, and like, and South Park is really good about this too.
Sure.
Actually, probably the best series for looking at how lore influences is the Venture Brothers.
I never watched it, but I know
So-
of it. Yeah.
The cool thing about the Venture Brothers is that they did not say what the lore is because they didn't have lore.
Sure.
Mhm.
But what they did is that what you see in the show is what's actually happening. So when they finished the series, one of the very first episodes was they go up to the space station, and there's this phantom spaceman all around the thing causing problems. And the phantom spaceman was later just in the original show. It's like, oh, it's just a myth. But when they finished the series, they used that episode as a fundamental piece to create the whole narrative.
Nice.
So the way it ended was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's an incredible callback. But they did that by just saying, we're not going to tell people what the lore is. We're just going to let create and flow as we create this episode, this series.
Well, I feel like a good example of just using like, here's what happened. That's all that's happening is Voltron.
Yeah.
We just posted this on the Discord a while back of how they didn't have script. They didn't have translations. So the American producers watched the animation that was all provided and completely made up the script and what was happening. And
I mean, to that extent too, Robotech.
Yeah. I mean, I think they had access to this, but they just rewrote it themselves and they pieced together these 3 properties.
Well, they had to because they didn't have enough episodes.
Yeah, because so when you have to have a new episode every day, that's an impossible schedule.
Yeah, like because it was 24 episodes for that one season, and they wanted so much, so they took 3 animes, and it was Macross, Southern Cross, and Mesopedia. I think it was called.
The
last one.
I did not know this.
Yeah, I don't know if that was what it's called, but like people might know it as Invid Invasion or whatever. But yeah, that third leg here in Mesopedia.
Yeah.
And then I think the Sentinels was just kind of created after the fact.
Right.
Or something.
But did you see when they made like the actual? Then there's a movie called Shadow something. Shadow Invasion or something like that, where they actually took that Robotech lore and now it's canon for them, and they made like a movie,
but that
it wasn't very good.
I think, well, that's the thing though. Like, like there's a lot of opinion on like, well, they shouldn't have done this. They should do that. And like, but people fell in love with what it was.
Yeah.
And I'm including me. And it's sort of like, you're taking this thing that imposes limitations and you're just like, okay, well, how do we make this work?
Yeah.
And it's almost like what you were saying about how these kids want to create this like massive, I'll do all this massive world building and backstory. And you're like, you just need to do it. I wonder how much you've struggled with that, because it sounds exactly like your style of your process that we covered a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. I was thinking about that exactly as you were talking. I was like, right.
Called out.
Didn't mean to.
In a way, though, I think along the lines of that, because to like quickly summarize, I can't quickly summarize anything, but
I feel that.
Let me sum up.
I typically in a way, I created the 2 characters that were lingering with me, and then okay, we have them. What's causing them to be this way? What's causing them to be who they are? And so I create the world. and I explore main, fixed time points that have to happen just because they're just coming to me. And that's how I explore. And it takes me a while to get through that. And then I use that to then adapt the characters. Okay, now that I have that, are they still the same? Are they changing? Do they evolve over time? And then I create my other characters and other settings that are developed from these fixed time points that I have. But there was something that you mentioned earlier before talking. It was your 3-step points.
Propose, analyze, correct.
Yes. And so I actually,
which is scientific method almost.
Yes.
But when you said that, I was like, holy guacamole. That's what over the last 5 years, how I've really developed everything that I just summarized into the product that I have now that I feel really strongly about. And I feel very confident that I will get it published within the next
year.
Yes.
Go ahead. Oh, well, and where I sort of I minorly disagree that that can't be right or whatever. I think that what you're talking about is a specific form of that where it's getting in the way of kids doing anything. Well, just to finish the point, I think what's interesting about that is the standard way that a lot of people write, and not everybody for sure, but you and me and a lot of authors we know, we have an ending in mind and we're building toward it.
Right.
But that's exactly the opposite of how reality works.
It's true.
Because how reality works is things move forward from the past, which is what you're doing. And it seems alien to the rest of us, even though that's how reality works.
You also can, I was to say, you're always trying to get to that target, whether or not you reach that target. Yeah, because when you're writing, you could find out that even though you aimed at that, you're going to be a little bit off. And you're still getting kind of near that.
But characters might have goals. You might have an end as an author, but that can change.
Yes.
And then we change the past to make that happen a lot of the time. Whereas I think what she's doing is I'm going to need to build the past. Sorry. I need to build the past. And then what's up there might change.
Do it all sort of at the same time. Well, it's exhausting.
And this is actually why I think understanding and reading history is so important. Because the thing, for perfect example, when Rommel and I forget the guy's name, the British general who was in charge of that, Montgomery. Montgomery. So, the thing that when people were first writing the histories of the North African process, they thought that Montgomery was just a genius because he was predicting what Rommel was doing. But it wasn't until the 80s that the MK Ultra project, not MK Ultra, I'm sorry, Ultra, which was the code breaking efforts by the Americans and the British and the Polish to break the Enigma codes. And so what turned out was that Montgomery wasn't a genius. He just was reading Rommel's mail. But see, that's the thing.
A lot of the Gurkhas thought he was an asshole.
Yeah. But that's the thing. History isn't our understanding of the past changes because how things that affected it come out later in life.
Sure.
So I think that one reason why knowing history is important for creatives is that seeing that ebb and flow of how information changes the past and how much the past dictates the future is one reason why I think when I'm doing storytelling and narrative, I actually just start with a concept, and for example, my Heavy Metal Queen universe that is Lord of the Rings, but the Vietnam War. I didn't know how I was going to end it until I went to a metal concert and I was listening to a band called The Year of the Cobra. You should go look them up if you like metal. They're great. And I realized that why should I put this in a foreign country? Why not if the story is actually happening in the United States when it's going on, the battle that they're fighting, and the main enemy is not the governments, but these magical characters called banshees.
Okay.
And banshees are created through this idea of blood percentage. That if there's enough blood on the ground, a banshee is created. But the thing is that that idea completely changed that whole story.
Yeah.
Where it went from let's talk about colonialism and military intervention to let's talk about humanity's innate need for blood sacrifice. And that was a better story element than what I had originally intended. So, I think, that again, this whole idea that, creation is a process of discovery, I think being okay with lore being flexible is really helpful for creatives because then you won't get locked in, If
I might add to that too, is something that we kind of talked about in our Trust the Process episode. We should send you the link to that because you might be interested in
I look
it.
forward to it.
But part of what, part of my process too, it feels like it aligns with that is that sometimes you might have, this giant timeline that exists, but your one book is not going to be that entire timeline. You almost have to decide what's the moment that the narrative is most intriguing or most pivotal, or even just the one that you want to tell.
What do you zoom that microscope in?
Exactly. And so that zoom in is just, it's so fun. I feel like to realize that this is the moment. This is the zoom in that's worth it to you. And that might actually be impactful to other people too.
Yeah. These are their stories.
I mean, I think what you touched on is a main reason why Blade Runner, the original one, will be so enduring, because that final scene, which the whole, I've seen the attack ships on fire of Orion, I've seen sea beams glitter in the dark Titan's gates. All these memories will be lost like tears in the rain. That was improvisational by Rutger Hauer.
Wow.
And the thing is that movie is so powerful because the most important moment of the story, of the commentary, everything boiled down to, I just want meaning in life. I want to know that I meant something to this world. And, that is again why having that flexible lore, because the original Blade Runner, they didn't really care much about lore. They just Ridley Scott and their writers were just like, how about we just mesh Neuromancer and do Android's Dream of Electric Sheep and see what happens.
You
know what though? When people do put a lot of effort into lore, it shows.
It does.
It does. It really does.
I want to be very clear, what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that you shouldn't work on lore. That's not what I'm saying here.
Right.
Sure.
But I think being okay with it not being the end of all things.
I would agree. Sorry,
sorry. No,
because there's a bass player. His name is Victor Wooten, an actual bass player. He's amazing. He's incredible, and he's a great teacher as well. And one of the things that he focuses on with his teaching is just learn the rhythm. Don't learn the theory. Obviously, there's a time and place for theory. I was trained on theory first at becoming a musician versus just going with it, because that's not really my best way of learning. I like the nitty gritty, show me how music theory works. I want to learn how to read music. But his thing is you just have to learn how to go with it. Listen to your other people.
And that's coming back to creativity benefits from structure, and I think I think the other part too here is people, lore matters. Character matters, because characters are, the perspective that you see your world through. But I think one of the hardest parts of modern sci-fi and fantasy is they feel that if they don't have some big expansive world, that it's not going to work. I mean, perfect example, when Alexander Jodorowsky and Moebius got together to do their Dune movie that never came out, they were very frustrated because there was a lot of really cool ideas that they came up with together. But when the movie didn't go through, Moebius and Jodorowsky started doing comic books together. And that's where we got the Incal. That's where we got Meta Barons from, and the idea of, the idea of, who's the dad of Paul in this, Duke Leto. Yes. So, in the original Jodorowsky Dunes, they actually had Duke Leto was castrated. And when they made Paul, it was this idea of Paul's mother gave him a drop of her blood, and that's how he was born in that movie. Because there's this idea of a child of love rather than sexual termination, but that never got into the film because they never made the movie. But they brought that same concept into the Meta Barons and reused those ideas, and that I think is another thing to keep in mind is that sometimes the original intent for an idea or a part of your story may not work for what you're working on, but it may work better for something else.
That's fair. Fair.
I don't know why, but that just gave me an idea for a t-shirt that goes back to the old David Lynch Dune. That says that pulls on my heartstrings. Yes. And a heart plug.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Sorry.
But I think that speaks to your way of writing quite a bit, where it's a visual, we have this concept.
Sure.
Let's make it work around it.
Right.
And it inspires you quite a bit sometimes.
Yeah, the visual. Absolutely. Always the visual. I've always been a visual person. Like I always joke, like, why the heck did I go into writing?
Yeah.
It's only because I can't draw. Like, and I know you'll argue that, like, yeah, anybody can draw. And it's true. Like, I can draw and I can, like, we just went to, this is our sip and paints.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Fun.
Look at our like wonderful artwork that we did. Like, but and this is the first time I actually painted actually on a canvas, which was fun. But it's one of those things that, like, the level of art that I would want to be in order to create like comic books and everything, it's self-imposed. And I understand that completely, like, but the ability or the time to get to that level maybe isn't in what I want to sacrifice right now, and maybe sometime in the future I'll get to that point.
Yeah, you're not willing to pay the cost of that investment.
Yeah, it's stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like I had to change my way of thinking when I started writing, because it's like, oh wait, I can't think of this like a script. I can't think of it like a movie. I had to, like, there's a lot more that goes into writing that, you guys know, when it becomes, because I never read books much when I grew up. And so it's like, oh, you have to describe a lot more than just like that one visual scene, or like just, point by point. There's a beauty and there's a poeticism to it. And there's all this stuff that, I knew was there, but it just, until you do it, you just don't know. Just like drawing, anything like that.
Yeah, you sort of take it for granted until you're forced to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm so happy you brought poetry.
Yeah.
Because I love poetry.
Sure.
And I actually think it's a great basis to start like figuring out how you do narrative, because, as I say, brevity is the essence of wit, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that, and this is one reason why I love Adventure Time so much, is that it really, if you watch the show, it's very creative, very, beautiful world, all that kind of thing. But the episodes function like poetry.
Okay.
And I think, and that's also kind of how movies function these days too. I mean, a TV show like, Game of Thrones is like reading a novel these days, there's so much going on. But like, again, like, bringing up Blade Runner again, it was poetic because it distilled this big, huge, world that people have never seen cyberpunk like this before, outside the written word. And, like, you could go deep into how Tyrell Corp became what they did, how the replicants are made, all that kind of thing. But I think it was smart of the creators to be like, you know what, we're not going to talk much about that.
Yeah.
We're just going to focus on what's happening in this film. And so it's a journey through this world, but so much about the world at the end because of how that poetic scene, that moment of catharsis that's so just grabs you and makes you feel, it makes you connect to something that's not human.
Yeah.
Just who wants to be human. And I think that's really where understanding the poetic is really helpful,
That's true. It's focusing on the feeling. Sorry.
Well, and I think a lot of poetry is just, again, inspired by, like, it can be inspired by that context, like you said, like building the world first, or having the scene, the narrative. And what I think of is, like, I don't know if you ever listened to Steve Winwood or anything.
I have not yet. No.
His songs are music first. He doesn't write the lyrics. They don't start as lyrics. He writes the music, and that serves to be the background to inspire someone else to write lyrics.
Sure.
That's like always how it works, like his biggest hits. And I think about that is the same kind of process of, like, which way should it be? And it works well, like both different ways. And I think that Rutger Hauer improvising that line, I wonder, would that have happened if he weren't surrounded by all this inspiring visuals, the rest of the script, like that came from a place of inspiration and it worked perfectly.
Yeah.
And, I don't think he's listed in the writing credits at all, because,
no, he's
but
not.
like, that's the line, that's the one line anyone quotes from that film.
Right.
Because it was so organic to the character too, along with everything else.
It was character relevant, organic poetry. That was inspired
and
by all.
And it really was that moment that shifted that, oh wait, Deckard's not the main character in this film.
Yeah.
The catharsis and the point of the film was in Roy Batty, and the replicants. And I mean, I think also, this actually leads right into something I think is a fundamental aspect of art and writing, is the idea of integration. You don't have ideas in a vacuum. And it's the influences you pull from. And, like, for example, when I'm doing figure drawing, I have this idea that's everything everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
You're using your understanding of anatomy and bone structure and musculature, and also how the body moves to create this story with just a human form, and I think, you really can't do that if you don't work from integration, because if you don't know what you're working with and pulling from both the story side of things and the art side of things, you can't really create what you're looking for. and I think, and then creativity, I think this is another reason when I, work with kids, I tell them every single time, if you want to be an artist, you have to be reading because you do not come up with new ideas that are interesting and unique without that source material, and I think, and like, I mean, granted, like watching TV shows is also, and movies and, it's good too. But I mean, comic books, graphic novels and novels that you all write will always be the founding of the primordial ooze of all these ideas coming forth,
I have found that like when people are having a lot of trouble writing, I look to how much they're reading, and I include things like listening to audiobooks, but how much they're engaging with the written word or the spoken word, like not just movies and everything. And I find that there's just a direct correlation. Like how good a writer you are is going to jive with like how much you consume words. And
it's kind of like with art
in a way that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like with art, like, you can be a good artist, but like, if you're not going to museums and seeing, I mean, a lot of people say like, I don't need to know what modern contemporary art is because I don't draw that. It's like, well, actually you do, because those modern contemporary art installations are using visual iconography in a way that you can benefit from.
Right.
And I think, and I think like this comes to like, I think with kids these days, I really worry about, where they're pulling from, because most of them just use social media for these things. And I got into a huge argument with a friend one time over, is a TikTok equivalent of reading the book? And no, it sounds dumb, trust me, but he believed that intensely. And I'm like, dude, like perfect example, Animal Farm, right? Very famous book, right? People say it's about, anti-communism, how terrible communism is. But, people, who's read that book by people when you ask them, well, how does that book end? And they're like, well, it ends with, the pigs taking over. So actually the final paragraph of that book says, and the pigs and the men all became the same. And the men who were there at the table with were the other farmers from that area.
Right.
And so it's not a book about communism. It's a book about authoritarianism and how even in democratic societies, it can take hold.
Right.
And that's why, reading the book is to its fullest is really important, because another book like that too. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Albert Camus. I love his philosophy.
Who is it?
He's Albert Camus. He's a French philosopher, existential philosopher.
Oh, sure.
And my favorite book that he wrote is The Myth of Sisyphus. And people say, oh yeah, it's the whole idea of like finding joy in your task, and that's how you find meaning and all that kind of thing. And like, yeah, that's like a really good part of the book. That's the main point of the book. But as someone who struggles with mental health, the whole first part of that book is talking about why one would commit suicide, and really gives a pathway to, I want it, like without that basis of conversation, the ultimate point of the book is so much more powerful, because instead of it just being a concept, it becomes a process that's taught through the book.
Right.
And I think that
like there's now a problem to solve.
Yes.
It starts with what the problem
is. And that's really, I mean, I have a lot of hope for this generation of kids. I think they are much more aware of what's going on than we were when they were their kids because of social media. But what I do worry about is that they have this awareness, but they're not being given it in a way that really benefits like critical thinking, and
Sure.
like,
I agree.
It's like older generations have the tools and not the awareness, and newer generations have the awareness and not the tools.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so if I might just, it sounds like because of the internet and the summaries that we can get from whatever, AI thing that you can get it from, it sounds like the interpretation that you read from somebody else doesn't actually serve you individually. It's the process of learning it and reading, listening, viewing, and absorbing the thing yourself is actually what serves you the most. And then you can discuss interpretation.
That's
absolutely.
I think there's also, go ahead.
Yeah.
That conclusion is actually in, it's actually not stated as a conclusion. It's part of a process in a book by Trungpa Rinpoche. It's like a Buddhist text, a Buddhist book. And he's talking about like, in order to really learn something, you have to be able to reproduce it in your own your own
I like
words,
that.
your own.
I really
You have to
like that,
recreate it
yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Where you're not just regurgitating it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's when that's not just when you know that you understand it. That's the final piece of understanding it.
Knowledge is useless if you don't have the impetus to act on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh.
So.
No, I was gonna say
Yeah.
too to that fact is like there's a lot of like up and down with like a lot of waves and everything, and it's very hard like when we're in a dip of any kind of like situation where it's like horrible or like things aren't going the way we want to, and it's hard to see that top of it, you know, and time flows so slowly, and we can look back at like other times where like, you know, World War II was horrible. We can all just agree that it was bad and everything, but the people in it, like they didn't know how horrible it was. They didn't know when they were going to get out of it and everything. And I feel like when we get into those times, like even now and everything, people a little dire about our situation and everything. It's just like, no, we just need to make it through, and it'll counteract, like, you know, and when we're good, we're good. When we're bad, we're bad and everything. It's knowing how to get through these times of even the good times. You got to like, you know, when you're in that, you enjoy those times, you know, but don't always expect that they're going to always be there, you know?
Yeah. And also that we don't. We also don't know how bad things are right now. We'll know later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think World War II is actually a great point to talk about this on, is like the power of myth and culture.
Sure.
You know, I think if like a lot of, for example, you know, a lot of people talk about the Pacific Theater. I mean, people really inordinately focus on the Western Theater in World War II. I'm a big Pacific Theater guy. I think it's probably the more interesting part of the war because it really was a race war of annihilation in a lot of ways. But like the thing is that, you know, how we got there, the myth is, oh, we were stepping in because of the atrocities committed in Nanking and the imperialism of the Japanese, you know, that, but like, you know,
people actually believe that.
Yeah. But
I've never even heard.
Well, but here's the thing, you know, if you don't know that when the Japanese had their explosive moment where they took over a whole chunk of the Pacific, and if you don't know that in Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, that, you know, molybdenum, which is a huge, very important metal for aviation, I believe, that the Japanese were taking over our resources. So, you know, if you don't know that was a factor, the you know, Pacific War looks very, you know, heroic, you know, but when you learn, you know, all the different parts of this, you really realize it was the economic war,
of course,
you know, and like and that's the thing, like, but the myth of World War II that people celebrate doesn't look great when you add those aspects to it, you know, and like the fact that, you know, the other part too, like, you know, a lot of, you know, people committing, you know, we don't talk about American war crimes in World War II very much, you know, but it was a war crime after war crime, you know, and
all sides. All sides.
So, I mean, and but granted, like, you know, like that really boils down to like, you know, how people understand culture. People understand the myth more than they understand the actual reality of it. And that's why I think understanding the myths and histories and flow of your own culture as artists and writers is so important, because we can talk about that in a way that other people can't, you know.
You know, there's an episode of The West Wing where there's a push like on from one of the colonels or whatever. He goes to talk to the chief of staff about this pending legislation about, like, you know, it's a war crimes legislation, like some kind of like, I don't know, punitive measures or like defining certain things. Like if you commit these war crimes, like you're answerable, and they're fighting against it. And he lets the chief of staff know, like, you know, when you flew this mission back in Vietnam, we told you were doing this. Here's what you actually did. Because he was a fighter pilot. He doesn't know. You're dropping bombs on these people. Well, no, you weren't. You killed a bunch of civilians.
And I mean, I think,
and he's like, why did you tell me that? And he's like, under the war crimes legislation, you could be sent to prison. And he's like, but why did you tell me this? It's like, all wars are crimes. Just that line summarized the whole episode.
I mean, the difference between the war crime and no reward is who wins at the end. Right. You know,
and how it's rewritten.
And
I think Victor writes the history, or what is it? Like there's like
and I think, I mean, that's one thing I will say that like is a really interesting factor of, you know, Enlightenment style societies, you know, Western, is like the idea that like you can have two things existing at the same time. You can have the beautiful shining city on the hill, but also like, you know, the undertone, you know, and like, I think you really only get a true understanding of how what you do and how what you live is unique by how we deal with the dark underside. You know, and that comes right back in the writing, you know, where it's and creativity, where, you know, you can make the absolute horrific look incredible, you know, and look venerable. You know, I think
Psychologically, we all do with our shadow.
Yeah.
And until those are integrated, you're going to have societies that like repress and distance from other societies.
Yes, and that's
it's
why
ego and shadow.
And that's why knowing the hero's journey is so important.
Right.
You know, because it's not a talk about a character and it's a talking about change.
Yeah.
And how the heroic cathartic moment where you overcome your shadow is not the fight that you have with the villain. It's the change that the hero goes through to be able to deal with that, you know?
Yeah.
So and that's one reason why I love Star Wars so much, you know, like I think it's Star Wars is not very complex, particularly the original series is.
Right.
I know the prequels are very to this day still like either you love them or you hate them. But like the cool thing about the prequels was the idea of the fragility of democracy.
Sure.
You know,
and fight scenes
too.
Lightsabers,
But that's the thing. I mean, you have like one of my favorite moments for Star Wars Revenge of the Sith is where you have Yoda and Palpatine going up into the Senate, and you have this like doom, doom, you know, from the drums and the dual fates playing, and it's this huge, you know, metaphor for the fight between the forces of good and evil and democracy. You know,
Battle of Heroes.
Yes, Battle of Heroes. You know,
which I think is ironically held while the Senate is empty.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. So, I mean, and this is, I think like this is really where art and like, I feel like art and writing are really the best hope for our society, because I think if we retrain ourselves to connect with the narrative and understanding of our own culture and how things are going, we really find that beauty that keeps us going towards the right place, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, the cynic in me is summarizing all of this to say, yes, audience, what the four of us do is the hope of society.
Yes. We are going to say
yes. Yes.
No, but it's like idle hands, man. Like, you know, giving people purpose and something that they do, like whatever small, like, you know, you can't hurt someone if you're drawing, I guess, like, you know, it's just giving somebody, like, again, like I always thought that the purpose to any, or happiness isn't just being happy. It's that purpose or finding that kind of purpose. Right. So artistry is such a good way of doing that. Whatever it might be. I don't care if you're putting together Legos. I don't care if you're like, you know, just cooking and anything like that, you know, providing for somebody. That's something, you know.
Well, I mean, there's a very famous quote from a Canadian who was underwatched by his own country because he objected to the Vietnam War. He said, bigots and fanatics seldom have any use for the arts because they can't imagine any other alternative to what they believe. Yeah. You know, and I think that, you know, it's, you know, I'm not here trying to make a political point or anything like that, but like, I think, you know, the arts are so important because we are the reminder or the consciousness of society that says, hey guys, maybe you should think about this too. Yeah. You know? So, I mean, that's
navigator of
and I also think we're at that stage of development as humans where as awful as wars are, they are also inevitable because we haven't grown up enough yet.
It's like the idea,
there's like the K-Pax movies based on a book. And one of the things in there is how they classify, how the aliens classify Earth as, you know, future uncertain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like the idea that Albert Einstein put forward, that in order for us to save ourselves, we must evolve to a new state of being. You know?
Yeah, and the implication of that identification of future uncertain too, which they flesh out a bit, is that all the advanced societies in the galaxy or whatever, they hit a point where their futures are like certain in the sense that
paradox.
They're not going to kill themselves.
Sure.
Yeah, the Fermi paradox. Yeah,
it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're just the first ones. That's why there's not other aliens out there. But
well, you know, I think actually there's a good story in this, and I've played around with this with the idea that maybe humans are the aliens. You know,
sure, yeah.
You know, and I mean, granted, like there's no like
I'm a citizen.
I mean, there's no like scientific standpoint for that being true because, like, you know, evolution and all that. But like, I think it'd be an interesting concept to talk about. You know, like, are we really the problem? You know,
I mean, well, was it Battlestar Galactica kind of suggests that, you know, where no spoiler. Yeah, I know you still haven't watched, so no spoilers, but like where they kind of integrated with what was already on Earth. So but no spoilers in that one. But I was finding it very interesting how quickly these interviews go because like we spend so much time, just talking and everything.
Yeah.
But we could go on for hours and hours and hours as always. So
we should have you talk about like what you're working on now and where people can find your work. And all that stuff.
Honestly, the best place to look at my work is going to be my website, which is just jaxroseart.com. I do I post my work up there. I do like a conversation about what I'm working on and also sketches. Also, if you live in the Alexandria area of Minnesota and have a kid who wants to learn about art, I post my classes there.
Nice.
Usually, I work very hard to make sure these classes are free for anyone to come to. But I think for my own art right now, as I mentioned before, I'm kind of looking more at the mundane, fishing and that kind of thing.
Cottagecore.
Yeah, pretty much cottagecore. I mean, like I actually would love to develop an idea that I have no idea where to go with. This idea of country punk.
Heck yeah.
I love it.
As someone I'm trying to get the guy who originated the term cyberpunk on here. And he's like, if I had a nickel for every time someone said cyberpunk, I'd be a wealthy guy. So now all the other terms everyone uses like country punk, it still kind of goes.
I think honestly,
you gotta go coin that. You gotta TM that.
It's too late.
Yeah.
I mean, I think honestly, the best way to say where I'm at with I'm in a transitional period right now. I think I have a lot of graphic novels I want to work on. I mentioned the heavy metal Queen universe I'm working on as Vietnam War, but Lord of the Rings. I also have one I'm working on called Third Testament. It's I'm not religious, and this is not intended to be, because I believe the best movies about God don't have God in it. And it really is a kind of conversation because my grandparents are very faithful people and they talk a lot about the kingdom of God and what that looks like. And that is like kind of taking like the cyberpunk God in the machine that you see in Warhammer and really focusing more on the cultural and the effect that has on like within culture and that kind of thing. I also have a work I'm working on called Lucy and Quinn, which is about two kids whose parents are going through the divorce. And it follows their journey to their grandparents because they missed their train. And so it eventually follows them through, the city that they lived in to the countryside and them trying to figure things out. And the whole idea of Lucy and Quinn is talking about a beautiful future. Sure. And using the idea of democratic brutalism, which is essentially brutalistic architecture by iconoclasm within that. Good example of that. For those of you who are aware of what happened in Charlottesville, the statue that was going to be removed is actually left there because as a monument, because it's been iconoclasm so desperately that they felt it was a better example of what happened rather than just taking it down the monument. Yeah. So, and then there's that one. And then I also, I have fallen in love with cars recently. So I'm working on, because I always want to do video work. So I'm working on like making a world where I use Hot Wheels as like actual models and the mixture of like 2D animation and the models to create sort of a flow. Sure. But, right now I'm really focused on the fishing right now because I started fishing for the first time this year and really fell in love with it. And so I was doing art to celebrate that currently. But yeah, I mean, like, I think with my art currently, I'm still figuring out exactly how I want to approach things. I did really enjoy working at the con, where I met Oscar actually. And, I really enjoyed doing commissions for people if they're in the Star Wars costumes. I really enjoyed that. But I think for me, my next step in my art is really finding the voice I want to use and make the commentary I want to do and that kind of thing, So, I, like, for example, I mean, if you go to my website, now the art that's there is probably going to look very different than it will next month, Sure. So, yeah, but, I think probably what I do mostly is arts education. I do really feel that the future of our world is based on our children, and how we guide them to their own best, the idea of we all do better when we all do better. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And, so yeah, I mean, like art is my life. Because what I do and how I live now is art is a huge part of that, and I think, I'm lucky enough to have time where I can work on my art and like slowly come to where I want to go with things. But I think honestly, I think the first story I'm going to write is a story called, Smoke in the Garden. I haven't sent you the pictures for that yet, but, it's following two people who meet each other in in the garden district, which I think like a city district, but turned into a garden essentially, like a greenhouse. Yeah. And it focuses on them finding a secret art installation. But like the focus of the story really is about finding togetherness and value in other people and like how that brings, you know, that love and calm to one's life, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm working on a lot of stuff right now, and I think I think my biggest thing is I just need to decide which one to work on and just go with it, you know,
or which ones, because it's not always one.
Right.
Sometimes you get sick of one, you got to work on the other. So,
well, I mean, I don't have ADHD, but sometimes I wonder, you know. So, you know,
undiagnosed. Let's go with it. Let's work with it. Right. Don't fight it.
But yeah, either way, we'll put your links down below in the description for this video,
and we'll populate the whole video with your images and everything. Every time you talk about it, we'll
our master editor over here.
You know, and you know, I think it's interesting. Actually, one thing that's interesting for me is like, you know, I draw a lot of anthropomorphic animals. I've always have done that my entire life. I'm not a furry, I promise.
There's nothing wrong with
nothing wrong with furries.
Nothing wrong with that, you know. But like, I think it's interesting because when I do art like that for people, they have a certain idea of what it's about, you know. And I think for me, like one reason why I love using anthropomorphic animals in my work is because it kind of removes the prejudgment we have for certain things, you know? And I think, you know, now granted, I'm not saying that I'm going to do a whole thing about racism because I'm a white guy, you know, I don't know what I'm talking about, you know, but like I think sometimes to tell a narrative, it's best to remove the preconditions of people. So they're just thinking about the story.
Sure.
You know? And I love actually,
as a black man, I approve that.
You know, and that's one reason why Lucy and Quinn is that, you know, Lucy and Quinn are two little foxes, you know, and one thing I'm doing with that world that is different is I'm not doing all the animals. I'm only using canines.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm doing that is I think it removes the parody that we use for races in this nation.
Sure.
And like, cause I hate, like, I really did not like Zootopia when it came out. Mostly because it was lazy commentary.
Sure.
And also because it was really making the analogy, well, okay, but these predators do eat these characters, you know? And I think it was making too much of an allegory that minorities are actually dangerous.
Sure.
You know, so I'm using just canines in my work because the differences between the quote unquote races in this book are only known to them. You know, we're not going to know as readers what is that. And I think that it makes the point that I want to make of a beautiful future in that work more potent.
Yeah.
You know, because it's essentially challenging you to release our need to categorize, you know, and that kind of thing.
Which is a very like a human instinct in a way. And it is hard to fight.
And again, that comes back to the idea of there's freedom in the unknown, you know, so.
Well, when you get your whenever you get one of these comic books out, we'll have you on again and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
We'll love to see.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say I really appreciate y'all having me come on today. This was absolutely fun. Really fun.
No, we appreciate you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thanks for coming out and rescheduling because we were all sick for the scheduled filming day.
Oh my gosh.
I'm on the end of that still, but
you know, I appreciate that because I had a whole bunch of substitute teaching to do that day. Missed that. That's like one thing I will say. Like I do the artistication I do myself, and I also substitute teach at the district, and they are desperate for subs. You know, so you know,
Well, until next time, we'll keep this fun thing going. We again appreciate you.
Yeah, I was happy to be here.
Yeah, we've been Bards and Balladeers, you know, doing our thing, and we'll catch you next week. I've been Rio.
I am Kate.
I'm Oscar.
I'm Jax.
All right, peace out, guys.
Later.
Bye.
Later.